Weil fáilte roimh a ghoin wasle seachtain éimethe agus táimiidir de dúnta dro de a belchne ráhíle sa fithe Tá aimimsir úntaach treis timppelach nílte choteisian sa neomh. Welcome again. We're shoving towards the end of May here in 2020, and while we've had wonderful weather during this COVID period in the last week or two, it's still a little cool down in the mountains here in Cooley, today anyway. Bees are swarming and fighting over new homes, and we'll be talking about another project later on tonight. But I'm going to start with this week's programme. Tá idir nua agus ógáin, I have a lot of kind of mixed things in it. One of the main singers tonight is Florence MacNeil from the island of Barra in Scotland. Flora McGuinness, Mrs. McGuinness, she married Alistair McGuinness, and of course she had a family of musicians and so on. The best known of them probably would be Maggie McGuinness, harper and singer. Flora was the main person for me in Scottish singing. I remember being with her for a week one time, at the Bones week anyway, and in the course of it in the morning, one morning a letter arrived in from an Italian who had been doing some research, and he thought he had listed all her songs that were recorded, and he had a list of pages and pages, 372 or 3 or 4 songs, and she was there smoking a fag and drinking a drapping of whiskey, as I was doing at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and going through the list, and she was saying, he forgot this, and he forgot that, and he forgot this one. So that he had forgotten over half the songs she knew, so that meant that she had well over 700 songs. A lot of people have since copied songs from her, and she would have been the source for much of today's popularity of Irish music, of Scottish music, Gaelic music, on the more original side of the spectrum, if you like. So Flora died some years ago, shortly after her husband died, and they're buried in Barra. So that's Flora MacNeil. Gavran and 2 songs from Flora now. Now, Avrani Eleon Chama, there's another wonderful woman singing tonight also. She's Marnie Chochan, and she lived in this house. She was born in 1932. No, she was born in 1924, I think, and her father built this house in 1932. And subsequently, her father died in 1954, I believe, shortly after meeting my father at the Oireachtas, when a delegation from Cork, from Cooley, was at the Oireachtas, and my father spent the week with them below in the Castle Hotel in Dublin. He was assistant radio music director in Radio Éireann at the time, and he was related to some of them because his mother's from around this area here, and they arrived back from the Oireachtas, Arnie Chochan telling me after, and one of the survivors of that group who only died a couple of years ago, Donald Hale, was telling me about it also. But Donald Chochan arrived back to this house to his wife and daughter Myra, and he was saying how they met this young man in Dublin who was very interesting, and so on and so forth. He dropped dead in this kitchen here 2 weeks later. He was sitting in his chair and just went to sleep, died. And some years later, his wife moved into Ballincollig, where his daughter Marnie Chochan had opened a chemist shop and married there. And as would happen, 7 years this house was empty, she sold the house to my father. So the circle was complete. She was a great woman, Marnie Chochan. Together we started a hedge school university in, I think it was 2000, the millennium year shortly thereafter, to study things of the Gaelic world from a Gaelic perspective, different discipline altogether, to the European model. And we started with oral transmission, or sean-nós, and she was in the same kind of colour as Flora was. When she was 80, she celebrated by buying herself a new car, a Mercedes, and recording a double album. This is the double album. She recorded it in the house here, and I have 2 songs from this on the programme tonight as well. Marnie Chocha and Kukui. Another girl that's on the programme tonight is Louise Mulcahy, and she's from the Mulcahy family. She, with her sister Michelle and her father Mick, they're very well known players, and they're all very good, really good players. And Louise plays the flute usually in the trio, but she's a brilliant piper also. So she's playing both instruments in tonight's programme. Then there's a new CD on tonight. This is Caroline Keane. Shine is the name of the CD, and she's just brought it out now. It's being launched, I suppose, next week or whatever. And she's originally from Limerick. She spent the last 6 or 7 or 8 years living down in Dingle. And what's interesting about this album is that she got it together using Kickstarter, or funded these funds. And I keep saying to musicians, in these days of lock-up and COVID and all that kind of stuff, we've no gigs, we've very hard to generate an income, no place to perform. So I keep saying to them, this is the time to do those projects you always wanted to do, make an album or research or whatever. And the way to fund these, quite often, it's hard to get grants and support, but if you go and do a funded drive or a GoFunded or a Kickstarter, there are ways to do this. I did the piano album this way and funded the buying of a piano that way as well. But this album by Caroline Keane is good. Tom Dooley is in this with her as well. I keep mixing him up with the bloody cook or the thing. Anyway, Delaney, I think he's a piper. He's with her on it as well in bits and pieces. Various of her friends are on it. It's a good solid CD, nice music, well played. Some of her own compositions in it as well. And you can get it from her site, CarolineKeaneMusic.com. So that's Caroline Keane. Then I kind of wanted to mention Mary McPartlin. She died in April, I suppose, early April, of cancer, and she was a nice girl. She was a singer, and she was an arts administrator and so on. She was one of the people. She was the main person, I suppose, that was the original idea of the Gradam TG car came from, and she worked on that quite a lot. I came across her personally when working with her in Galway University. She asked me to do some concerts and things there, and I was taken with her. So I have 2 songs with her tonight to remember her by, because with all the people that are dying and going, especially musicians, I don't think I mentioned her passing on the radio a couple of weeks ago. Another album I have on tonight is Pádraig McDonagh, Johnny Joe Fatchin's son, Johnny being one of the main singers, a big friend of Willie Clancy's and so on. And Pádraig spent, according to himself anyway, 25 or 30 years thinking about doing the album, and eventually he did it, and he called it Haram, or About Time, not Before Time. He's a banjo player, and there's a lot of lovely lilt or pulse to his music. And you'll notice that in tonight's programme if you go to it. The programme is, if you're looking at this at a later date, the programme is 1019, programme 1019. This then is Dedanin. This is the latest version of Dedanin a couple of years ago. Frankie, obviously, is chief cook and bottle washer as always, and is the main sound in it. There's been various teams in the Dedanin story, all great musicians, and there's a couple of tracks of this version of the band on the programme tonight, including a gas one called the Gas Alley, the Gasoline Alley, the Rod Stewart one. So then there's Fáilte Ichalig, the harper, and I've shoved in quite a number of tracks of hers into the programme tonight. Leash is living in Achill. She's one of the best harpers in the country. She's experimenting a lot with playing with her nails at the moment, like the old Irish harpers did, and which gave them the reputation of being one of the wonders of the world, because you get a lot greater dexterity if you use your nails rather than your fingertips. and she has been spearheading that. She's very good at playing dance music, particularly rapid finger movement, and I was taken with her experimentation in the accompaniment area of the melodies she was playing. So I've kind of used a few of those tracks to let people hear it and not browbeating anyone about it, but just letting them hear it themselves. And also, this is the year in the Bownor 2020, the Seanra the Bownor. There are 2 medals this year. One is for pipes and one for harp. And the closing date for that will be the last Friday in September 2020. Great hero of mine, Joe Cooley. He's several tracks or more of his in the programme tonight. Joe was from South Galway, and he had a real specific way of playing the accordion that was full of life. He emigrated to America like so many more, and one of the recordings was made in 1963 when he came back briefly and he visited Dublin, and he found an old accordion that he had left behind there, and he picked it up and played it. And there are various. The main couple of recordings are done about 3 weeks before he died. Were done in a pub again in South Galway near not Lochray. Down there anyway, and he was getting weak towards the end, so they stopped recording, and he went home and he died within 3 weeks. But he was the life and soul of box playing that time, a man that he greatly influenced was Johnny McMahon, and I have to say, I just think he's a wonderful player, but you'll hear that in the programme. Dennis Murphy, another great hero. He was from Sliabh Luachra, New Guinea, and he's another man that had to emigrate to America, and he played with Lad O'Byrne and all those lads over there when he was in America. He used to come back then, and he'd visit my father here. I remember him coming. I remember we went down one day to collect my father, drove down, and I went with him, and there he was standing outside the mills, and he had the fiddle hid up under his back because there was no welcome from traditional musicians that time. And if you went to a pub with an instrument, a lot of pubs would throw you out again, so you had to sneak in. And once you were started, they mightn't be so brave in throwing you out then, but they didn't like to see you coming. So Dennis was a wonderful player, full of music. He was a pupil of Tom Billy's and great acolyte of Padraig O'Keefe's, and his sister Julia and Bridgie. Bridgie was a small little woman. She used to play the accordion. Everyone talks about Julia. Julia had a son, Billy Clifford, as well. That Julia was living in England, and she used to play a fiddle with the horn in it. We had lots of good times. But anyway, Dennis Dennis and Julie went up to Dublin in 1967, and they recorded an album called The Star Above the Garter. They went in at 2 o'clock, and they had the whole lot finished by 5, all 12 tracks, and came away home again. Dennis used to come, he had a little grey Cortina car. Anyway, Dennis was a lovely man. It's 3 or 4 tracks of his in tonight's programme. And then in the programme tonight, I shoved in some of my own stuff with Martin Hayes and Caoimhín O'Reilly. This is the 2nd and the 3rd album of Trúr, the project where the 3 of us did 3 albums together of original material. And my reasoning is because I'm announcing tonight the details, and I'm telling you also that I am doing 19 new tunes, which I will release 2 every week, every Monday and Thursday, starting next Thursday, the 4th or 5th of June. And they will be, I will play them first, then I will play line by line, and I will explain what the special fiddly bit in every tune is, what makes them different from the other tunes. The idea is that anyone that is interested could learn a tune or 2 tunes every week, and by the time the summer is over, they will have a whole new collection of tunes. The tunes are simple tunes, and I'm providing the dots as well on the website. Now, all these tunes I will release first to my patrons 2 days before they're released to the general public. And to that extent, there's a couple of tunes of my own tonight with Martin and Caoimhín to give a kind of a taste of what to expect in these coming weeks. So you'll next see me again next Tuesday with the first of these tunes that will be released publicly on the Thursday. And they'll be going on twice a week from now to the end of the summer, 19 altogether. 5 I'll play an accordion, 5 on concertina, 5 on tin whistle, and 4 on piano, so that non-traditional musicians will have something to work with as well. There are no flacos, no competitions, nothing like that happening during the week, during the summer, no festivals. So there must be a lot of young musicians, particularly, who have looking for targets and things to do. Maybe this might interest them. So, Gurmagav, if you're not already a patron, please do become a patron. And if you're on the website, or the YouTube website, please click below to support. Gurmagav.